When I was 9, I remember sitting in a classroom, responding to the teacher's invitation to write down what we wanted to do when we left school, and I wrote down that I wanted to be a priest. My mother just decided one day, well, you're not sure about being a priest, so you can leave school. And it was devastating. I want to say to any young people to be absolutely sure of your faith and to find like-minded young people who will help you to sustain that pilgrim journey with the Lord in faith.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Heart Talk, brought to you by Shalom World TV. My name is Niall McDonagh, and today I am joined by the Bishop of the Northampton Diocese, Bishop David Oakley. Your Excellency, it is an absolute pleasure to meet you, and thank you for taking the time to do this interview.
It's good to be with you, Neil.
So, Bishop, let me begin by asking you about growing up in Birmingham. What was it like, your childhood and your family life?
Well, I was born in a little town called Stourbridge, which is 20 miles southwest of Birmingham.
Okay.
And as the children began to come along, I'm the eldest of 5, my parents decided to move to Birmingham when I was about 7 because they thought there was more possibility there of Catholic education and also employment for my father. So we grew up in the south side of Birmingham,
okay,
a place called St Dunstan's King's Heath. And if I tell you there are 9 priests from that parish, 2 of us actually have become bishops now, but it was a very vibrant, lively parish community, and the church was our life. I used to serve on the altar. I was part of the Legion of Mary in the junior presidium to start with, graduating to the senior presidium eventually, and an extremely alive community with about 4,000 people going to Mass every Sunday at that time.
Brilliant.
School for me, secondary school anyway, wasn't a Catholic school. I passed the 11 plus and somehow didn't end up with the 2 Catholic grammar schools in Birmingham. But I don't regret that because I went to a local authority grammar school and had to give an account of my faith.
Okay.
I had to be a witness from an early age. Not that people were against the idea of Catholicism, they just wanted to know more about it. Right. They were intrigued.
As well, Bishop, I think I read that your first job was in a department store. What was that like?
That was very interesting and all part of God's plan, I've no doubt about that. Didn't really enjoy it, but was fascinated by people.
Okay.
This was the first time I'd mixed with a lot of adults, a diverse group of adults. I worked out very quickly I wasn't meant to be in retailing.
Okay.
I wasn't hard-nosed enough, frankly, in terms of business.
Right. Was there anything that you learned, even in that job, as much as you felt it wasn't for you? Was there any skills you learned back then that you use today in your present ministry?
Oh, yes. Well, you have to get on with people when you're in retailing, and you have to be able to chat to anyone, really.
Okay.
And I quickly worked out that the people I was working with, I was a young supervisor as a 17-year-old, and I thought, they need the gospel.
Yeah.
They don't just need overtime and all those sort of things,
Oh.
But I had an experience there as well, which changed my life. 2 of us were showing a new member of staff around these huge refrigerated rooms about the size of this room here.
Yeah.
It's an incredible story. All the safety mechanisms failed and we were locked in there. And I honestly thought I was going to die. I was praying the Hail Mary thinking, this is it.
Wow.
It's the hour of my death. And the amazing thing is, the other 2 were banging on the wall and screaming out. And eventually we were let out. It would be a great health and safety business today.
Yeah.
But in those days, they just gave you a glass of brandy and told you to get back onto the shop floor.
Really?
But it changed my mind.
Wow, beautiful. And then your vocation then, Bishop, you mentioned you had an attraction to the priesthood, but tell me more about that. When did you first sense an attraction to the priesthood?
Well, when I was 9, and not too long ago, my little sister teaches in the school where we all went to primary school.
Okay.
I went back for a vocations week there. And when I was 9, I remember sitting in a classroom, responding to the teacher's invitation to write down what we wanted to do when we left school. And I wrote down that I wanted to be a priest. So by then I was an altar server.
Yeah.
And I think, truth be told, I thought, Father has more interesting things to do at Mass than I do as a server, so I wouldn't mind doing what he did. It was serving Mass, really, that brought me closer to the Lord. And also being part of the Legion of Mary, we used to go out and, as little ones, really, we didn't do much, I suppose, but there was that sense of mission. There was that sense of wanting to share the faith with others. One of the things we did do, which used to fascinate me, but at the same time horrified me, on Saturday afternoons, my mother would take me into town to do some shopping, really, for the week. Bless her, always trying to get the cheap cuts at the end of the day. But the Legion of Mary used to stand in a circle and pray the rosary in the middle of the Birmingham Bullring Market. And I used to hate the idea of being there when any of my school friends passed by. But on the other hand, I think it gave me a bit of a taste to want to show people.
A tremendous witness. Wow. And so then, when did you actually end up then entering formation for the priesthood?
So quite quickly, having realised I wasn't meant to be a retail manager, I spoke to my parish priest about it. He said, "Oh, good, I've been waiting for this moment." And that was the June in 1974. And by September, I was in Oscott College.
Beautiful. And how did your family react to the news when you entered formation?
Oh, I think they were very encouraging. But my mother, God rest her, was wonderful. Really, I know men came to the seminary with a great burden of family ambition, as it were, on their shoulders. But my mother just said goodbye to me, and she said, "You've got a front door key, son, and you know how to use it." It was her way of saying, you can drop out any time, really, if it's not meant to be for you.
She left the door open for you.
She did so.
Beautiful. And what was your experience like then in seminary?
It was quite strange, leaving family life to join a community of over 100 in those days, very institutionalised, of course, regimented, but I soon got into the pattern of life there. I enjoyed the study, although I hadn't managed to get any A-levels or anything like that.
Beautiful. And when you started your priestly ministry, Bishop, what brought you greatest joy?
Well, truth be told, in my first appointment, I remember the Vicar General telling me where I was going, and this is literally how it went. He said, "Can you imagine a conversation? Can you imagine a parish which has 3 hospitals, general, psychiatric, and geriatric, 3 primary schools, a secondary school chaplaincy, and a prison chaplaincy, and 4,000 very needy inner city people?" I said, "No, Monsignor, I can't." And he said, "Well, there is such a place. It's called St. Patrick's Dudley Road, and that's where you're going."
Oh, wow.
And my heart sank. It was really tough. So what gave me joy? Working with young people and some of the families, really, getting to know some of the families. And very quickly, I joined a group of priests called the Jesus Caritas Fraternity. Once a month, we would gather to review our life and to pray before the Blessed Sacrament, to share our reflections on the scriptures together, and that really kept me going, I think.
Yeah, wonderful. And in 2013 then, Bishop, you were elected rector of the seminary in St. Mary's College in Oscott. Were you surprised at this appointment?
I was very surprised about it, not least because I'd been there in the 90s as pastoral director and procurator, and struggled with it for various reasons. I think institutionalisation is okay as a seminarian, but when you're a priest and you've been a parish priest with the responsibilities of that, to go back into the team of the seminary formation community was very challenging.
Really?
So when I was appointed rector, I could think of all sorts of reasons why that wasn't a good idea.
Okay. And in your opinion, Bishop, what qualities do you think a priest should have?
I think 2 primary qualities. First of all, he needs to have a personal relationship with the Lord. I'm not going to specify what that exactly looks like, but he needs to have a real prayer relationship with Jesus. I'd say he needs to be fascinated by the person of Jesus. And secondly, I think he needs to realise he can't live this life and exercise this ministry out of his own energy. He has to be open to what the Holy Spirit wants to do through his life. Those would be the two principal characteristics. And then following on from that, I think a man has to be a credible witness to the faith.
Right.
So he has to be able to present what the church teaches in a way that is attractive to people.
Okay, yeah, beautiful. So Bishop, for any young person that might be watching this interview that might be considering religious life or entering the priesthood, what advice would you have for them?
Well, go for it would be my advice. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And just be open in your heart and in your mind. Don't have any narrow ideas of what it might be like in formation, but just be open to what's happening. And remember that, as the Lord told us, the seed has to fall into the earth and die before it can bear fruit. And believe me, within the seminary community, there'll be lots of opportunity to fall into the ground and die.
Okay. And the Holy Father appointed you bishop in 2020?
Yes.
What was your reaction when you received this news?
Well, it was a complete shock. So it was the final day of our autumn term in the seminary, and I started to listen to a message on the phone and then had to stop listening to it because I had to go and celebrate Mass with the guys before they were going home for Christmas. And then it was about 5 o'clock that evening, I finally got back to the phone and found there was a message there from the nunciature asking me to go down and meet with the nuncio. And at the time and day was duly arranged. I had to ask the secretary, how do I get there? Not ever imagining I would be going there, and thinking probably I'm in trouble somehow. Maybe the nuncio wants to tell me there's been a complaint about the seminary or something, you know.
Getting called to the principal's office.
So it was a big shock to find myself becoming a bishop in the first place, and then to be coming here to Northampton.
Wow, okay, yes. Brilliant. And you were consecrated on the Feast of St. Joseph. Did that have a significance for you?
Well, I deliberately chose that date because St. Joseph is a great model for me of spiritual fatherhood. And as the chief shepherd of a diocese, I felt it would be all too easy to get into sort of an administrative understanding of the episcopal office, which I didn't want to do. I wanted primarily to keep that image of St. Joseph. But when the year of St. Joseph came along, I was filled with joy, really, that there'd be an opportunity for me to reflect more deeply on the witness of St. Joseph.
Right. And do you think St. Joseph has a big role to play today with a lot of division in family and all the complexities and moral complexities that we have in the world today? Do you think St. Joseph has a big role to play?
I do. I think he's a great witness. And if you listen carefully to the gospel, he doesn't actually say anything. His witness is more profound in a way than the spoken word. It's the action of listening carefully to the Lord and responding to what is asked of him. And it's a pilgrim journey. He journeys from Nazareth to Bethlehem, from Bethlehem down to Egypt, back to Galilee. It's not at all the sort of life that most people would imagine. And yet it's the life that a lot of people live today. A lot of people are on a journey today.
Absolutely. And then if we're thinking on a wider scale, Bishop, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges facing the church today?
Well, we have to nail it and say one of the challenges is our credibility, especially after the events of the last 20 years or so. I think we face a really deep challenge as an institution trying to proclaim the gospel to people in a world where people aren't necessarily open to receiving the gospel. But you know, Catechism of the Catholic Church begins the journey of faith with a wonderful statement. I could paraphrase it and say that there's a God-sized hole in every human heart. It puts it more eloquently than that, of course. But that's what it amounts to, that the human heart is yearning for God because we are made in his image and likeness. And I sometimes think we need to have the courage of the conviction of our own faith.
Yeah.
And if we believe what we believe, then it is much easier to reach out to others as evangelists.
Right. And it's a really important point you've made there, Bishop, about the credibility. How do you think we can regain that credibility as a church?
Well, the heart of the church is self-understanding. In Lumen Gentium, the document on the church in the Second Vatican Council, is the universal call to holiness. And we have to become holy in our different states of life, whether you are called to the consecrated life, called to the celibate priesthood, called to ministry of any kind, called to marriage, family life. We have to discover what being holy for me is all about.
Yes, okay, universal call to holiness. And where do you see the church in the future?
There's a beautiful quote actually from St. Basil of Caesarea, of all people, writing on the eve of the Council of Nicaea back in the 4th century. And he said that the church in his time seemed to him to be like an enormous sea battle at night. There's a lot of noise and confusion, and you can't tell who is friend or foe. Ever since I read that, courtesy of the theologian Joseph Ratzinger, who became Benedict XVI, I've always thought that is a wonderful quote to keep me going. Just about sums up many of my days as a bishop. And yet we know that the Lord is at the heart of it all.
Yeah.
It's his church. It's his church.
Yeah. And with the ever secularization of the country, what do you think it will take to try and engage the young people and bring them back to the church?
Well, authenticity. I think we have to just be authentic about who we are. I am very much involved in pastoral theology. That's been my theological discipline now for over 30 years. And at the heart of that discipline is the understanding of the signs of the times based on Matthew 13. In other words, the parable of the wheat and the tares. So the wheat and the weeds are growing side by side, and it's only on harvest day, it's an eschatological parable, that we begin to see the wonder of it all. I think there's a lot to rejoice in the church. A lot of young people I know are very committed.
Yeah.
And also, perhaps I might put it this way, unlike their older brothers and sisters, they're not so battle-weary or tired, and they want to go out, they want to reach out to others.
Yeah.
That came out in the synodality process.
So you think there's a fresh energy there, Bishop?
I do. I mean, it's a smaller energy.
Yes,
we haven't got the numbers, but let's not get trapped into numbers.
Right.
And let's listen to what young people are saying. We had the synod, didn't we, on young people, faith and vocation not too long ago. I was intrigued by the consultation leading up to that synod on behalf of the bishops of England and Wales. And I was the rector in the seminary at the time. And I found a lot to rejoice in the data, that they came across a number of young people who were seriously committed to the Lord, had a personal relationship with him, and as I said earlier, are open to what the Holy Spirit wants to do.
Yeah, and it's beautiful because I think it's incredible that the young people that are involved in the faith today, they have a true devotion to the Eucharist and to Mary, and there's a strength and a fresh energy there, you know. Any young Catholic that might be watching this, Bishop, what message do you have for them in terms of them trying to tackle the complex challenges that are in the world today, but at the same time trying to give a witness to their faith in Jesus Christ?
Well, I want to say to any young people young person who is watching this now, I want to encourage you to be absolutely sure of your faith and to find like-minded young people who will help you to sustain that pilgrim journey with the Lord in faith. And I think if we can get into a situation where our faith is being nourished regularly, then there's no reason why we shouldn't have incredibly fulfilling lives. Whatever God is calling you to, whether it's priesthood or consecrated life, or whether it's marriage and family life, there are so many examples in our society today of people who are very happily part of the church.
Beautiful, yes, thank you, Bishop. And you've been priest more than 40 years?
42.
42 years, 2 of which were bishop. What are you most grateful for?
I'm just grateful that the Lord has constantly carried me through thick and thin and helped me to overcome numerous obstacles and hurdles in the journey, and has put up with me in my weakness, really, and brokenness. Yeah.
And finally, Bishop, your strength and your passion for the role, where does it come from?
Oh, well, I'm very blessed here in Bishop's House to have a lovely little chapel. And I just come out of my bedroom every morning. The alarm goes off at 5:30, and when I'm up and ready, I come out of my bedroom, and the first hour of the day, whatever else is going to happen, is spent in adoration. And that I couldn't imagine doing it without that.
Wow, beautiful. And so adoration plays an important role in your life?
Absolutely.
Wow, beautiful.
We are with Jesus. When we're in Eucharistic adoration, we are with Jesus, and I can just share everything with him.
Yeah, beautiful. Bishop David Oakley, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Neil.
Maybe getting.
You can't always.
This is the depth.
Remarkably empty.
Turn back towards God. Rise up.